for soldiers who already had to carry weapons, ammunition, and other gear. The weight made it difficult for infantrymen to move quickly, which was a major disadvantage on the battlefield, where speed and agility could mean the difference between life and death. The Brewster armor essentially turned soldiers into walking tanks, able to absorb hits but not very agile, or able to fight effectively in a dynamic combat environment. Number 5. Helmet with change screen. The helmet with change screen is a unique piece of World War I military equipment that reflected the desperate need for protective gear amidst the horrors of trench warfare. This unusual piece of headgear was designed to address the challenges faced by soldiers in a conflict where the lines between battle are a hybrid of a traditional infantry helmet and a veil, creating a protective barrier against flying debris, bullets, and shrapnel. The helmet itself resembled a woman's hat with a veil attached, a somewhat peculiar appearance that belied its practical function. The veil was made of fine wire mesh, effectively acting as a barrier between the soldier's face and the dangers of the battlefield. It covered the face while allowing for visibility through small, strategically placed holes in the mesh. This screen provided protection from the hail of bullets, shrapnel, and dust that characterized the frontline experience during World War I. It was an innovative solution to a common problem: how to maintain visibility without exposing vital parts of the body to direct fire. The idea behind the chain for enemy movement, inspect their surroundings, or take aim when needed. The veil was fine enough to keep out debris and shrapnel, but not so dense that it completely blocked the soldier's field of vision. Number 4. Costume armor. Costume armor, a fascinating and somewhat misunderstood category, reflects a unique blend of practicality and pageantry from the medieval period. Unlike the functional armor designed purely for protection on the battlefield, costume armor was used more as a symbol of status, honor, and artistic expression. The design of costume armor was often elaborate and intricate, aiming not only to protect, but also to impress. Many suits of this armor were adorned with motifs, engravings, and even simulated textures that mimicked fabric. These pieces were often made from high-quality steel and decorated with gold leaf, silver wire, or precious gems, making them as much a work of art as a functional piece of armor. One of the most striking aspects of costume armor was its ability to imitate ordinary clothing. Some suits were designed to look like dresses, complete with flowing skirts and puffed sleeves. These garments were intended for tournaments, where knights would display their skills and honor in mock battles, often against other knights. The armor used in these events needed to be mobile enough to allow for agility and movement, yet sturdy enough to protect against the blunt force of wooden lances or blunted swords. The skirted armor, for example, would have provided protection for the legs without restricting movement. Number 3. Ceremonial armor and helmets with masks. Ceremonial armor and helmets with masks are among the most intriguing pieces from the medieval period. These items were not created for battle, but rather for ceremonial occasions, tournaments, and displays of power and wealth. Ceremonial armor often took the form of elaborate breastplates, helmets, and suits that were far more ornate than their combat counterparts. The designs were detailed, featuring motifs such as floral patterns, animal figures, and even mythological beings. These designs were not just for show, they often conveyed specific messages about the wearer's lineage, achievements, and status within society. For example, a knight might have armor that featured his family's coat of arms or the emblem of his liege lord, that covered the face entirely, or featured elaborate visors that mimicked facial features. These masks were not for practical protection, but rather served to impress and intimidate. The helmets often depicted mythological creatures like lions, eagles, or even fantastical beasts, adding a theatrical element to the wearer's presence. Some helmets were designed to look like animal heads with exaggerated features such as horns, beaks, or wings. These masks could also serve a dual purpose, allowing the wearer to blend into the background during parades or tournaments, masking their identity and enhancing their mystique. The use of masks in helmets was particularly pronounced in the East and Byzantium, where ceremonial armor was more common, worn by rulers or high-ranking nobles during processions, where their presence was meant to awe the populace and signify the power of the state. Number 2. Elephant armor. Elephant armor with masks is one of the most fascinating and unique forms of protection from the past. Originally created in the 16th to 17th centuries, this armor was not just for defense, but was also a symbol of wealth and status. The design was elaborate, reflecting the effort and resources put into making sure these enormous animals were safeguarded during warfare. The armor was intended to protect the elephant, a symbol of power and might, during battle, while also making a visual statement to the enemy about the wealth and strength of its owner. The most notable aspect of elephant armor was its weight, evened by enemy forces during battle, as it was the area that offered the least protection naturally. The armor itself was made using a splint method, different from the typical chainmail or steel plate armor. It consisted of lightweight, thin strips of metal fastened together on top of one another. This splint armor was easier to move in and provided a decent level of protection against blunt force and arrows. The design also included a dense layer of chainmail between the metal strips, which helped to absorb and distribute blows more effectively. This chainmail was crucial because it allowed the elephant to remain mobile while still providing adequate defense against both sharp and blunt weapons. In addition to the physical armor, masks were a significant part of the design. These masks, offering a good range of visibility while protecting its vulnerable face and trunk. Number 1. Blowfish helmet. The blowfish, known for its ability to inflate when threatened, was the key to creating this helmet. When the fish senses danger, it inflates its body with water to make itself less vulnerable to predators. This action was crucial in the creation of the helmet because it allowed the warriors to harvest the tough, spiny skin without the risk of injury. Once caught, the blowfish would be buried in the sand for several days. During this time, its body would dry out completely, transforming into a hard, spiny shell. The drying process was necessary to remove the toxic insides of the fish and ensure the helmet was safe for use. After the drying process, the warriors would carefully transition from a spiny, toxic fish to a protective helmet required patience and skill, as the skin had to be handled carefully to avoid damage and ensure the final product was both protective and functional. The blowfish helmet was not just a simple cap of scales. The artisans who made these helmets went to great lengths to create designs that were both practical and visually striking. The helmet's design allowed the wearer to be protected against blows from clubs, swords, and even arrows, albeit with some limitations. The spines of the blowfish were arranged in a pattern that provided defense without hindering the wearer's vision or mobility too much. This was crucial because in battle, warriors needed to be able to see their surroundings clearly to avoid ambushes or attacks from multiple directions. In addition to its protective features, the blowfish helmet was also adorned with decorative elements, making it a status symbol among Pacific Island warriors. These helmets were often richly decorated